In the name of God, who comes among us this night, please be seated. Well, Merry Christmas. It's really good to be here tonight, isn't it? It's remarkable. I hope you get a chance to walk around and have a look. It's really good to be back. And if you're like me, please don't feel like you got to look at me. Look around. It's just stunning and just a little bit different enough to be worth having a look around. Gorgeous to be in here. I hope for you and for those you love a peaceful and joyous holiday. I hope your celebrations have already begun and that you get some time with the people that you enjoy. And if this is a hard season for you this year or a lonely one, first, thank you for being with us, and we hope that this is a safe place for you. And take care of yourself. We're glad that you're here. So, almost goodbye to 2019, which is fine by me. It's been quite a year. And so in thinking about this season in this year, I went back about as far as I know how. Ephraim the Syrian wrote in the 5th century that Jesus was conceived in the ear of Mary. Of course, not literally, but in her hearing and in her listening. I'm wondering this year how we might invite the light of Christ into our own lives, into the world anew, in our listening. To whom do we listen? And what do we need to hear? Some voices, of course, demand our attention, which is part of why 2019 has been a tough year, right? Or fight for it. So advertising and politics, all the usual things. But we also have some choice in that. So what have you chosen? And if you have a part in how the light of Christ appears in the world in the year to come, and you know that you do, to what must you listen? We come into spaces like this with our real lives. We shouldn't pretend we don't. I hope it has been an overwhelmingly good year for you. I know it's been a tough year for many, and this time of year can be tough as well. I know of a few of the health concerns and scares among us in this room today. For some of us, this has been a year of profound personal loss, of unexpected death, concerns about children or work, kind of the usual, stressed family relationships. Or your concerns may be of the world that we live in and to which the Christ child comes this year. I think wine caves are the most recent non-scandal scandal we've had, which I have to say, what a beautiful room for a meal and not too different from this room, really, which is a beautiful, safe space to reflect on what is possible. So today we remember that we are reading a story of a Jewish family, written in such a way that Jewish readers would recognize these promises inherent in this story. This was a story written for them, about them, and comes to us a little more obscured in meaning because we are not from those communities, but with a little effort, we too can find their meanings. But because it is a story of Israel, it points to the strange phenomenon which we see in the world around us today, in which the facts themselves seem to twist upon themselves until we cannot collectively agree to what is true, or we don't even care. How can a tradition like ours, that is so firmly rooted in Jewish practice and Jewish history, become the primary perpetrator of anti-Semitism, escalating in our country today to our shame? It is as though we hate ourselves or our origins, our history, that we have thrown up and deflected onto some other that is us as well. And so we must remember today that Jesus the Christ is born and dies a Jewish man, and there is still so much to learn about ourselves as Christians in that very important truth. We remember today that the Bible tells a story of a series of migrations, forced by political forces and the threat of violence as in every time. This is our Christmas story every year, how God comes among us in our tradition. I find it very convicting every year. Today, when we know children and adults lie on concrete floors behind chain-link fences at our borders or encamp out in the elements south of the border, refugees, asylum seekers, migrants, detained or held back and demonized, this is today's response to the kind of characters we read about in the Bible this night. Joseph the carpenter and Mary, his young wife, are on the move without much of a plan except to get to the town where his family is from, historically and mythically. Like so many people all over this planet today, in encampments of people buffeted about by forces so much greater than them, desperate for a place to live in peace. And then, like now, taxed for the vanity projects of this state, for the legacy of a deluded old man, and by that I mean the ones that proclaim a tax on the people like Mary and Joseph, who will go to Bethlehem to be registered to pay their share for the legacy of that cruel old Roman governor that history has not remembered kindly. We watch around us, as was also happening at that time, and we witness the fragmenting of the social and cultural fabric that we thought or hoped or dreamed knit us all together. And in that time, like now, we hear the language of unity and courage. Joseph is a child of Abraham, a child of David, a proud heritage of his people. Mary sings her Magnificat about return to freedom and dignity for her people as well as for her family. In the context of their reality, this becomes the language of resistance and maybe even revolution against their daily lived realities, their vulnerability to systems of violence, in their case, a government that did not care for them. That vulnerability is contrasted by this beautiful language that they speak of their dignity. It is again so much like today, when the language of dignity and freedom and justice seems to put us at odds amongst ourselves, as opposed to what it should do, which is literally constitute or make up the diverse threads that weave together a new future, a better future in hope. That drives towards something better and more hopeful for future generations seem to include a greater understanding across difference, support for the striver, affection for the dreamer. As halting as that progress might have been in the past, we thought it was progress, or some of us did. It was something like a garment, an agreement that at least on the surface of things we had agreed might bind us all together. Today, in so many places around the world, it seems that we are being separated out by forces who care for their own power more than any other value, and it's happening almost everywhere. This is no great innovation, the Bible tells us. In a town called Nazareth, a man of modest means and his already very pregnant wife pick up and move at the end of her pregnancy, precariously, to Bethlehem, probably with crowds of other people traveling this way and that across that ancient landscape to be counted, to be registered, to be taxed, and who knows what else. In India, where my family is from, the registering of births is a haphazard affair, which is being exploited by the government today to exclude many from citizenship. So I have an aunt, all 5 feet and 90 pounds of her, who tells the story of trying to prove her birth by first going to get her certificate of baptism from the church, where that part of our family has been baptized for at least hundreds of years, and being told that because the church had joined another sect of orthodoxy, she was then a heretic, she could not have her certificate of baptism. They wouldn't give it to her. Like everyone in that generation of my family and before, unless there was a crisis, they were born at home. Their first documentation was at baptism, which was pretty soon after birth, and then school registration when you were 4 or 5 years old. And both involved someone on behalf of the child stating their name, their date of birth, and where they were born. So there's a lot of confusion in that generation of my family about birth dates and proper names, as you can imagine, because it was so dependent on whomever was there when the question was asked and the form was being recorded and kept. And one of my great-grandmothers was very creative and answered differently many times for the same child when this was her task. So for my aunt, because her father, my grandfather, had died, and she was unmarried at that point, and her brothers and brothers-in-law were out of town, as a woman, she could not legally ask for anything. She had no standing. So she decided to go to their local government representative's office and insist that he sign the affidavit to request her certified birth certificate. So good thing for her, her party had won in that election, and good thing my aunt is tough as nails and quite compelling. And it worked out that time. But her story illustrates what it can take to register, to document a life, a person who clearly has no other nation, no other place. It's all a power play, and only the most vulnerable are affected. If you want to participate in the kind of lives most of us live here in the US, you have to have a lot of that kind of documentation, and it comes so easily for most of us. But if you don't have it, or if you live in any way that is precarious, if you live on the streets, if you get robbed, if you cross a border, or simply go to the city from your village in some places, you can end up in a crisis as tricky as my aunt, but without the goodwill of an office worker who essentially took pity on a young woman he had never met. Joseph and Mary do something like that in the story today. They are to be registered to be taxed. The story doesn't tell us if the registration happens, how it works out. We know Jesus isn't listed on any Roman registry that we have historically because Christians would be all over that if we could have that kind of documentation, but it doesn't exist. I think the story functions to place this little family in a particular place and time and class, a social space that was vulnerable to power and without any of the obvious signs of power. In this little, inconsequential, historic place, connected by stories of their ancestors, the woman Mary has her child, cleans him up and wraps him up, and today we remember. We remember the unskilled laborers who saw a vision of angels and came to worship a baby. We remember that the night would have been dark like this night, with the dim light of fires like these candles on the altar, if there was any light at all. We remember that this night Bethlehem is separated from Jerusalem by checkpoints in a wall built right through the path of these first few chapters of Luke, our Christmas story. This night, like that night, it is easier and safer for outsiders like us to travel those streets than Palestinians, who are the local Christians. We remember that the light of the world comes to us through the stirrings of darkness, birthed out of the absolutely ordinary and yet miraculous stirrings of labor to become the Word that draws us into this place this night, thousands of years later. A light has shone in the darkness, we are told, Mary's little baby, God among us, a sign of where the power of God is revealed. On this night, as we marvel at the beauty of this place, in warmth and with hope in our hearts for the year to come, I ask you to consider to whom you will listen in the year to come. Whose stories do you need to remember? Do you need to hear for the first time? So that something on the order of a revolutionary compassion is stirred up in your own heart. What do you need to hear to nurture it and to encourage it? To whom will you open your heart and your imagination? I invite you to consider who it would be in this time that might mean that you too will hear voices like angels, the songs like the young Mary's, the dreams like Joseph's, to see the light of Christ anew, emerging out of the stirring darkness that has enveloped so many of our dreams and in which we sit shrouded this night. Behold, sing praises to the Lord our God, who has looked with love upon us, who enters this creation to be formed by the body of a woman, with the praise of God and her people's song of liberation on her lips. Behold our God, who offers us salvation from despair, disillusionment, and disdain. Behold God, who speaks, if we will but hear, who shames power and invites us all to be free. Merry Christmas.